Welcome to English Through Ideas podcast, where we learn English through powerful ideas.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So imagine you are standing outside an apartment door in Harlem. Inside, there are three armed fugitives, and they are locked in.
Right.
Snipers are positioned on the roof across the street. The SWAT team is waiting for the order to breach. But, you don't have a weapon. You only have your words.
Which is a terrifying situation to be in.
Absolutely terrifying. Today's deep dive is about how the FBI uses deep psychology to diffuse life-or-death situations exactly like that one. And, how you can take those exact same high-stakes tactics and apply them to your everyday life.
Yeah, because the stakes might look different in our daily lives, but the underlying human psychology is identical.
Right, it's the same brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whether you are asking your boss for a raise or try and convince a stubborn toddler to go to bed or, negotiating the price of a car at a dealership, you are in a negotiation.
We negotiate all day long.
We do.
Yeah.
But true negotiation is not the aggressive shouting match we see in the movies. It's not about forcing your way.
Right.
It is actually this subtle art built on deep empathy and an understanding of how the human brain actually processes information under pressure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for a very long time, society taught us that humans are fundamentally rational creatures.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Correct.
We are taught to approach disagreements like math problems. You lay out your facts, you show your spreadsheet, you make a logical argument, and then the other person is supposed to look at your data and say, you make a good point, I agree.
Yeah, but that assumption is precisely what used to get people hurt in real hostage situations.
Wait, really?
Yeah. To see the devastating failure of logic-based negotiation, we really only have to look back to a tragic airplane hijacking in 1971. It was by a man named George Giff.
Okay.
At that time, the FBI relied entirely on brute force and logic. They gave ultimatums. They tried to reason with an armed, panicked man as if he were a calm, rational actor.
Which he obviously wasn't.
Not at all. And when logic failed, they lost patience and literally fired at the plane's engine to stop it from taking off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the result was a horrific bloodbath. It was the ultimate harsh proof that humans in high-stress situations are simply not rational beings.
So trying to use pure logic on an angry or panicked person is like trying to install a software update while the computer is literally on fire.
That is a perfect way to put it.
You have to put out the fire or the raw emotion before the system can even process the new data.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of cognitive psychology, the work of Daniel Kahneman explains exactly why that computer is on fire.
Right, the two systems.
Yes. Kahneman revealed that human thinking operates on two entirely different systems. He called them System 1 and System 2.
Okay.
System 1 is our fast, emotional, survival-driven animal brain. It processes threats in milliseconds.
Right, it's the instinct.
Exactly. And System 2 is the slow, logical, reasoning part of our brain. It does the math. It reads the spreadsheets.
But we all walk around believing System 2 is driving the car, We think we are making logical choices.
We desperately want to believe that. But in reality, anytime there is conflict, stress, or negotiation, System 1 instantly takes the wheel.
It just takes over.
Completely. When we feel threatened, even just by a disagreement at work, our emotional brain floods the body with stress hormones. It literally hijacks the neural pathways, pulling energy away from the logical system too.
Wow.
So you cannot reason with someone in that state because the logical part of their brain is, well, it's temporarily shut down.
But let me push back a little here. What about highly educated, highly intelligent people?
Right.
Like, surely someone with a PhD or a massive intellect can override that animal brain and remain purely logical.
We would certainly think a brilliant mind could outlogic their own emotions. But the sources highlight a fascinating story about a seasoned FBI negotiator who attended an executive negotiation course at Harvard University.
Okay, Harvard. That's as intellectual as it gets.
Right. He was put into a mock negotiation, like a praxis scenario, against some of the top legal professors in the world. These were the literal academics who wrote the textbooks on logical negotiation.
So it's a showdown. The academic scenario was intense, right? The professors told the FBI agent, "We have your son. Pay $1 million or he's gone."
Yes, and instead of playing their academic game of numbers and logic, the FBI agent completely abandoned facts.
He just ignored the logic.
Completely. He leaned entirely into emotional tactics. He just asked open-ended emotional questions, keeping his voice incredibly calm.
Like what kind of questions?
He asked things like, how am I supposed to do that? He didn't offer a single logical counterproposal. He just kept subtly triggering their system one.
And what happened to the professors?
Those brilliant Harvard professors completely fell apart. They became frustrated, they scrambled, and their pristine logic just dissolved.
That is wild.
It proved that no matter how many degrees you have, you are still a biological, emotional creature first.
So if logic completely fails, even the smartest people on Earth, what did that FBI agent actually do? How do you bypass a panicked brain and get someone to cooperate?
Well, you have to speak directly to the emotional brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the fastest, most effective way to do this is through something called tactical empathy.
Tactical empathy.
Yeah. Now, this is crucial. Empathy does not mean sympathy. It does not mean you agree with the other person or that you think they are right.
Right, you aren't validating their demands.
Exactly. Tactical empathy is the strategic act of making the other person feel deeply, profoundly heard. Because when a human being feels understood, their biological defense mechanisms drop.
And there's a very specific, almost Jedi mind trick way to create that feeling called mirroring.
Yes, mirroring is remarkably simple in practice. It is just repeating the last 1 to 3 critical words of what someone just said.
Just repeating their words. Wait, won't people instantly notice if you were just repeating their words back to them like a parrot? Won't that make them feel mocked or angry?
It sounds like a terrible idea until you look at the neurology behind it. We possess something called mirror neurons in our brains.
Okay.
We are biologically wired to fear what is different and trust what is familiar. When you repeat someone's words back to them, those mirror neurons fire.
So it's a physical reaction?
Yes. It sends a subconscious biological signal to their survival brain that says, this person is like me. This person is safe.
Wow.
There was actually a famous psychological study done with waiters in a restaurant to test this exact mechanism.
Oh, right. I remember this from the sources.
Yeah, so one group of waiters used positive praise when taking orders, saying things like, great choice, or awesome, coming right up.
Which is normal waiter behavior.
Right. But the other group used no praise at all. They just mirrored the orders, repeating the customer's exact words back to them.
I would think the positive praise would make people happier, but the results were staggering. The waiters who simply mirrored the orders got 70% higher tips.
70%.
Mm.
Just for repeating words. It builds this invisible bridge of trust. We see this applied in an everyday office setting in the sources too.
Right.
There was an employee whose boss was very stubborn and, old school.
Mm-hmm.
He demanded physical paper copies of a massive new project.
Which is a nightmare.
A total nightmare.
Yeah.
Traditional logic would dictate that the employee argue. She would say, printing is bad for the environment, it wastes budget, it takes too long.
But that would trigger his defensive system 1.
Exactly. Instead, she just mirrored him. He said, let's print 2 sets of everything. She looked at him and replied calmly, 2 sets.
She didn't ask why we need 2 sets. She just stated the words as a gentle question.
Right. And he paused, processed his own thought, and justified it. He said, well, 1 for us, 1 for the client. She mirrored again, for the client.
Huh.
Suddenly, the boss realized the client hadn't actually asked for paper copies. He thought about it for another second and said, you know what, digital copies are fine.
That is amazing.
She won the negotiation and completely changed his mind without making a single logical argument.
But the delivery is the secret ingredient here, right? Because if I say 2 sets in a high-pitched, panicked voice, that boss is going to get angry.
Oh, absolutely. This raises an important question about vocal tonality. You cannot mirror someone with a rushed or aggressive voice.
Right.
You have to use what the sources call the late-night FM DJ voice. It is a slow, calm, deep tone with a downward inflection at the end of your sentences.
Downward inflection?
Yes. A downward inflection physically signals to the listener's nervous system that everything is safe, settled, and under control.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because mirroring builds a fantastic bridge. But what happens when the person on the other side of that bridge is terrified or furious or aggressively defensive?
Right.
Just repeating their words isn't going to put out that kind of fire.
No, it's not. When dealing with heavy negative emotions, mirroring isn't enough. You had to disarm those negative emotions directly.
And how do we do that?
You do that through a technique called labeling. Labeling is identifying the negative emotion the other person is feeling and putting it into words. You use neutral phrases that start with, it seems like, or it sounds like, or it looks like.
Let's go back to that terrifying scenario we opened with. The 1998 Harlem apartment standoff. 3 armed fugitives. Traditional police tactics would demand compliance, right? come out with your hands up.
Yes, but giving a command to a terrified person with a gun is the fastest way to trigger a violent reaction from their survival brain.
Right. System 1 takes over.
Exactly. The FBI negotiator on the scene understood this, so he didn't demand anything. For 6 straight hours, he just spoke through the apartment door and labeled their fear.
6 hours.
6 hours. He used his calm DJ voice and said things like, "It seems like you're scared to open up. It sounds like you don't want to go back to prison. It looks like you're worried about what will happen if you walk out that door."
He just named their fear. It's exactly like turning on the lights in a dark room.
How do you mean?
Like, when you're a kid, you think there's a terrifying monster under your bed. The darkness makes the fear massive and paralyzing. But the second your parent turns on the light, you see it's just a pile of laundry.
Right.
The monster loses all its power. That is what labeling does to a negative emotion in the brain. It forces the brain to move activity from the emotional center to the logical center just to process the label.
That's a great analogy. And after 6 hours of simply having their fear labeled, those 3 fugitives opened the door and surrendered peacefully. Not a single shot was fired.
Unbelievable.
Because naming the fear tames it. And the sources reveal you can take this concept even further with a powerful, almost uncomfortable tool called the accusation audit.
Oh, the accusation audit.
Yeah, this is where you intentionally list out every single terrible thing the other person could possibly be thinking about you. And you say those things out loud before the other person has a chance to speak.
Honestly, saying the absolute worst things about yourself in a professional business meeting sounds like career suicide.
It does. It requires immense courage, but it is deeply effective. The sources share the story of a student named Anna, who was trying to save a $1 million government contract.
Okay.
The partner company was absolutely furious because their funding was being slashed. Anna knew walking into that room that they were angry and ready to fight.
So what did she do?
Instead of defending her company or hiding from the tension, she opened the meeting with an accusation audit. She said, "I know this might feel like we are being the typical, ruthless prime contractor. It probably sounds like we are breaking our promises and leaving you out to dry."
By saying the worst things first, she completely stole their ammunition.
Exactly.
You can't attack someone who has just openly agreed with your worst fears. The partner company immediately lost their defensive posture. They actually relaxed and said, well, no, you're not the villain here. We know it's complicated.
Right. It shifted the entire energy in the room from a hostile argument into a collaborative problem-solving session.
So, you've used your late-night DJ voice, you've mirrored their words, you've labeled the negative emotions, and you've audited their accusations. The person across from you is finally calm.
Yes.
Now, human instinct screams that this is the moment to push for agreement, get them to say yes, close the deal. But the sources reveal that chasing the word yes is actually a massive trap.
It really is. Chasing yes is one of the most common and damaging mistakes in communication. We think yes means success, but yes actually makes people feel cornered.
Think about the last time a telemarketer called you while you were eating dinner. They start the call by asking, do you like clean drinking water?
Right.
You immediately feel your defenses go up, don't you? You know it's a trap. If you say yes, you're giving them permission to pitch you a water filter you don't want, so you feel manipulated.
That feeling of manipulation triggers System 1 defensiveness. Conversely, allowing someone to say no makes them feel incredibly safe. It gives them the illusion of control.
So no is actually a good thing.
Yes. When people feel they have the right to veto an idea, their heart rate literally drops. They relax. A no is not the end of a negotiation. It is the starting line. It opens the door to real, honest dialogue because the person no longer feels trapped.
So if we aren't chasing yes, what is the actual goal of the conversation?
The ultimate goal is getting the other person to say 2 very specific words. That's right.
Not you're right, but that's right.
The psychological difference between those 2 phrases is the difference between failure and success. To understand the power of, that's right, look at the year 2000 Philippine hostage crisis.
Right, with Abu Sabaya.
Yes, a terrorist leader named Abu Sabaya was demanding $10 million for an American hostage. For months, the U.S. negotiators argued logic. They said they couldn't pay it. The negotiation was completely deadlocked.
So logic failed again.
Exactly. Finally, they shifted tactics. They stopped arguing. They just listened deeply and started summarizing Sabaya's political and religious grievances back to him.
They just repeated his own views.
Yeah, they repeated his worldview so thoroughly and accurately that Sabaya suddenly paused the negotiation, took a breath, and said, "That's right."
And moments after saying, that's right, he completely dropped his $10 million demand.
Just like that.
But I really want to emphasize the difference between that's right and you're right, because I actually live this with my own son, Brandon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Brandon plays American football. And a few years ago, he kept making this terrible mistake on the field, smashing face first into blockers instead of dodging around them. It was driving me crazy.
You tried logic.
Exactly. I would pull him aside and explain the geometry and the strategy of the game. I would lay out the logic perfectly, and Brandon would nod his head and say, "You're right, Dad."
But he went right back out on the field and made the exact same mistake, didn't he?
Exactly. Nothing changed, because when he said you were right, it was just a polite brush off. It meant, I agree with your logic, but I haven't internalized it, and I want you to stop talking so I can leave.
Right. It's a defensive response.
It wasn't until I stopped lecturing and labeled his hidden fear, I finally said, "It seems like you think dodging a block makes you look weak and cowardly." He stopped dead in his tracks. He realized I finally understood the emotion inside his head. And he looked at me and said, "That's right."
Oh.
Only then did his behavior actually change on the field. "That's right" means, you understand my world.
What's fascinating here is that once they say, that's right, the emotional barriers are completely gone. But you still need to get what you want out of the deal. You still need a resolution.
Right. You still have to solve the problem.
Yes. And the way you achieve that is by making your problem their problem. You hand them the work of solving the issue.
And we do this through what the sources call calibrated questions. These are carefully designed, open-ended questions that almost always start with the words how or what.
Yes.
You absolutely want to avoid asking questions that start with why.
Why is a trigger word. If someone makes a mistake and you ask, why did you do that? Their brain interprets it as an accusation.
Yeah.
They immediately prepare to defend themselves.
Right.
But if you shift the exact same inquiry to what led you to that decision, it feels curious and collaborative.
The true power of how and what questions is that they force the other person to pause and use their logical brain to solve your logistical problem.
Exactly.
There's a harrowing story from Ecuador that illustrates this beautifully. An American couple, Jose and Julie, were targeted by rebels in the jungle. Jose was kidnapped, and the captors demanded a $5 million ransom.
Which is terrifying. The FBI was brought in to coach Julie over the phone. When the kidnappers called and aggressively demanded the $5 million, the FBI told Julie not to argue.
No logic.
No logic. They told her not to say no. Instead, she just asked a calibrated question. How can we raise that much money?
She didn't refuse them. She just asked how.
And every time they made a demand, she followed up with another calibrated question. How do I know he's really unharmed?
Wow.
By constantly asking how, she forced the kidnappers' brains to stop focusing on violence and start thinking about her logistical problems.
It put their system two to work.
Yes. It caused massive debates among the kidnappers themselves as they tried to figure out how to answer her. It wore them down psychologically and bought precious, life-saving time. And because of that time, Jose eventually managed to escape on his own.
The sources highlight one specific variation of the calibrated question as the ultimate negotiation tool. How am I supposed to do that?
Oh, that is the best one.
But I have to admit, doesn't asking, how am I supposed to do that, make you sound weak? If I say that to my boss when I just look helpless and incompetent.
What's fascinating here is that it feels like giving up, but it actually gives the other side the illusion of control.
The illusion of control.
Yes. When you ask someone, how am I supposed to do that, they feel powerful because they are the ones advising you. They feel like they're dictating the terms and acting as the expert.
But secretly, you are steering the ship.
Exactly. You are framing the exact boundaries of the conversation. If you deliver that question with a calm, respectful tone, it triggers their natural human instinct to help solve a puzzle. You are putting their system, too, to work for your benefit.
So let's say you've used all the tools. You've lowered the temperature with your FMDJ voice, you've mirrored to build connection, you've used labels to clear away the dark clouds of fear, and you've asked calibrated questions to give them the illusion of control.
You've done everything right.
But sometimes, despite all of that brilliant psychological maneuvering, a negotiation is still completely stuck. Neither side is moving. According to the sources, that means there is a critical piece of information you haven't uncovered yet.
Yes. In the high-stakes negotiation world, this hidden piece of information is called a black swan.
A black swan?
A black swan is the unknown unknown. It is a hidden truth, a secret motivation, or a piece of leverage that, once discovered, completely changes the gravity of the entire situation.
It's like feeling your way along a dark wall and suddenly finding a hidden door that bypasses the locked gate.
Finding that door changes everything. There was a business student who was trying to buy commercial real estate in Charleston. The broker was asking for around $4.3 million. It was a standard, grueling, tough negotiation. The student was using his labels and calibrated questions, keeping the conversation going, just probing in the dark, trying to uncover a black swan.
The tension is high, the price won't budge, and then the broker makes a totally casual comment. He just lets slip in conversation that the seller of the property is currently dealing with some failing loans on other buildings in Atlanta and Savannah.
And that casual slip was the black swan. The seller wasn't just casually selling a property for maximum profit. The seller was secretly desperate for immediate cash to save his entire portfolio from collapsing.
Wow.
Once the student uncovered that hidden truth, the leverage completely flipped. The student now knew that speed and certainty were vastly more valuable to the seller than squeezing out the maximum price.
Because he needed the cash right now.
Exactly. And because of that single piece of hidden information, the student was able to drop his offer significantly, ultimately closing the deal at around $3.6 million.
So what does this all mean? It means that a truly great communicator, a master negotiator, isn't a bully. They aren't the loudest person in the boardroom banging their fist on the table and demanding compliance.
Not at all.
They are an empathetic detective. They are actively listening, quietly observing, and gently uncovering the hidden truths and fears inside another human being.
Negotiation is never about defeating the person sitting across the table from you. It is about sitting next to them, looking at the problem together, and defeating the problem.
Before we wrap up today's deep dive, let's circle back to that image we started with, bringing a spreadsheet to a wildfire.
Right.
If you only rely on logic and data when emotions are running high, the fire is just going to burn your paper to ash. But if you use tactical empathy, you can actually speak to the fire, calm the flames, and figure out what sparked it in the first place.
I love that. And I want to leave you with one final fascinating tool to practice on your own this week. It's called the Rule of Three.
The rule of three.
If you want to know if someone's agreement is real, if their yes to a deal or a promise is genuine or just a fake brush off, get them to agree 3 different ways in the exact same conversation.
How do you do that?
First, they say yes to the initial proposal. Then, a few minutes later, you summarize the deal back to them and wait for them to say, "That's right." Finally, later in the chat, ask a calibrated how question like, "How will we handle this if we hit a delay in the schedule?"
And if they are faking it, how can we tell they are lying?
Watch their pronouns closely. If they are faking their agreement, they will suffer from what researchers call the Pinocchio effect.
The Pinocchio effect.
Yes. Under the cognitive load of lying, their sentences will become wordy and overly complex. And most importantly, they will subconsciously stop using the words I or we, distancing their personal identity from the lie.
That is wild.
It is a massive verbal tell that they aren't fully committed. Just something fun and highly effective for you to watch out for in your next meeting.
Thank you for learning with English through ideas. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe for more ideas, more English, and more growth.